Hello everybody, I'm Ian with Board Feelings, and I have taken a bit of a hiatus while I was moving, and I also lost my friend group who I was playing games with, and so I'm trying to reestablish all that, but I'm coming back today with a review of this game, Star Wars Clone Wars. Now, besides the Star Wars intellectual property, there is another reason why I wanted to feature this game. You see, I'm not a huge fan of Pandemic. I like it, I think it's a good game with a very solid system. But something about it is just a little bland to me. So because of that and some other reasons, I've stayed away from a lot of the Pandemic games that have come out over the years. Including the legacy versions because I just don't have time to play that many sessions of a single game. But then the World of Warcraft version, Wrath of the Lich King, came out, and everybody said that it iterated on the system enough to make it different and unique. But that IP doesn't really appeal to me, so when the same designer came out with this version, I had to give it a shot. At the heart of it, this shares a lot in common with base Pandemic. It's a co-op game where you're all working together against the impending threat. You'll be taking actions moving on the board and removing droid armies. You're also going to be utilizing the cards in your hand to take care of specific threats. But then, of course, the main mechanic of Pandemic, where you're going to be seeding a threat on the board and then also reshuffling the discard pile and placing it on top of the deck, meaning that places that have already seen a lot of activity will continue to see that activity. So those are the similarities with the Clone Wars to Pandemic, but how does it differ? You're going to start the game with either 3 to 6 missions, and you must complete all of the missions before you can move on to fighting your chosen boss. So a mission includes both a location and also cards needed to complete the mission. So you're going to be moving around to those specific areas to then use your cards. The next difference is one I've already hinted at, is the fact that there is a villain that you choose for each game. Once you've completed the number of missions you decide to play with, you're then going to go against the villain in a final showdown, where again you're going to have to go to a specific location and then have to defeat the villain by utilizing the cards in your hand. So the last difference I've actually been dancing on actually has to do with the cards in your hand. Just like in Pandemic, there are different suits, different colors of cards. However, the cards you acquire in the Clone Wars, which are called recruits because they're actually different clones that you can have with you, instead are exhausted instead of discarded, which means your hand of cards does not deplete when you are completing missions. Additionally, each suit gives a special ability that you can use on your turn. For example, the blue transport suit allows you to double the distance you move. The red assault suit allows you to add an additional damage when you do an attack action. And the yellow armor suit allows you to block 1 damage against you. And just like when you are completing missions, when you are utilizing these cards, you do not have to discard them. You only have to exhaust them for the round. At the beginning of the next turn, they will become unexhausted, so you can use them again. And with that, they also changed another thing. In the previous version, when you depleted the deck of cards that you drew from, you immediately lose the game. In this version, it is now an action that you take in order to draw cards, and additionally, you do not lose the game if you go through it. You just reshuffle the deck. I also want to cover attacking a little bit. When your character moves into a space with a number of enemies, they can then take an attack action. We're going to roll this 12-sided die. You're going to roll the die, and each success counts as a damage against the enemy. If you see a damage symbol yourself, that means you must take a damage. And the way you do that is by actually discarding the recruits in your hand. That means the only way recruit cards are going to be removed from your hand is either by damage or if you reach the 7-card limit and must discard them. Actually, there is another change I wanted to talk about real quick that I forgot to mention earlier. And that has to do with the virus spreading in Pandemic. In this version, that is gotten rid of entirely. Instead, whenever a planet has 3 droids on it and you replace a 4th, instead you place this blockade token and move up on the threat track. A blockade does a few different things. First, it takes 2 damage in order to destroy it, but also means you cannot destroy anything else on the planet or complete missions that a blockade is on. But also, there are only 3 blockades in the game, so if you ever have to place an additional blockade, you increase the threat marker. So now, the only lose condition that you have to worry about in this game is the threat reaching the end of the track. There are different things that can push the threat to move faster, but that's the only thing you have to worry about in this game. Okay, so that's the basics of Star Wars The Clone Wars, which is based on the Pandemic system. Does this blow Pandemic out of the water? I don't think so. I think it is a good iteration on Pandemic, and I think it is a really good game, but I don't think if you didn't like Pandemic, you will like this one. I think if you like Pandemic, you will potentially like this one a little more, like I do. And if you love Pandemic, I honestly don't know how you'll feel. I think you may like it, but it just depends if you like the additional things that are added. But what I absolutely think is fantastic about this game is the variability. In base Pandemic, the only real variability you get in it is basically the shuffle of the cards, where the actual viruses are going to appear and then spread. But in this version, you get a huge deck of mission cards, but also comes with 4 different villains that each act a unique way. So between the random missions and the different villains and the 6 different heroes you can choose from, there's a lot of replayability, a lot of variability just in that. Then add on top of it what base Pandemic provides, which is in the shuffle of the cards, and you have a very replayable, very unique game each time you sit down. So with all of that, how does Star Wars The Clone Wars make me feel? Honestly, relieved. Because you see, I wanted to like Pandemic. I wanted to be a fan of it, but it was just, as I said before, lacking in a few ways. This, I think, rounds out that experience perfectly into a game that utilizes the system, which I think is fantastic, and gives it a little more flavor, a lot more theme, and just makes it really interesting for me. And hopefully it can do the same for you. Anyways, I'm Ian with Board Feelings, and those have been my thoughts and feelings on Star Wars The Clone Wars. Have you played it? What did you think? And let me know of another game that had a reskin or reimplementation that you think improved it ever so slightly to make you enjoy it. Leave your thoughts and feelings in the comments below, and I'll go if it's many Board Feelings.